So you are in a crisis. First time? Maybe it is your first time going through a true crisis. Maybe you've been through hard times before. Tough times. Times that tested you. Times that tried your patience and your resources. Rough times, hard times, difficult times. Enduring the storm. Maybe you've been through that before. You've been through hard times before and came out the other side. But this is different. Something is different about the crisis point. The storms gather, roll in, and then another, and then another. You weren't done processing and coming out of the other side of the last storm, and yet another one comes in. Things just keep going wrong. And you find that this is one thing after another after another. And this could be going on for weeks, months. And it's the sort of catastrophes that happen during this crisis are the things that they interrupt your ability to rest, your ability to function in life. These could be the big, big pillars around which we build our lives on. You may have trouble at work, or you may even lose your job. And then on top of that, you have health concerns, health problems. You get sick or injured, and it's serious. And then there's issues in the family. So there's a crisis outside of yourself as well as within yourself. And you find every aspect of your life starts to come into question. Your finances are in question. Your health is in question. Your future starts to be in question. All of these things that you were so certain about, that you had a plan, you were confident, you felt secure in all of these structures and things that you put into your life and that you've worked so hard to achieve and to put in place. And suddenly, just that shiver down your spine as the shadow of doubt starts to creep in. And the crisis point is different to the storm, because when a storm comes in, that could be like one of these things happen. So you can handle it. When something's going wrong at work, or you perhaps even lose your job, or you have to leave your job for whatever reason, that happens, but your family life is fine, your relationships are fine, your friendships are fine, and your health is fine. Your mental health is okay. And so just one of these things, one of these very difficult times, it's testing and it's trying and it's hard work to get through. But you battle through it because everything else is with you and supporting you. But the crisis point, the real test, the real struggle is when multiple things all go wrong at once. And I'm sure I don't need to tell you just how dark life can get. It gets rough. Your child might get sick, seriously sick. And you're trying to go to one of these appointments, trying to go to the hospital, and your car's broken, your car won't start, and you need to call the mechanic. And then you can't pay the mechanic because for some reason your bank account is locked. And so you're trying to ring the bank. And you ring the bank and it turns out that your account's been hacked or something, so they've frozen it. And you're like, great, okay, well, things are just going wrong here all over the place. And you finally manage to get your child to this appointment or go visit them in hospital or something. And then you get sick, you get ill. And then you're struggling to perform at work, and then there's bad news at work. And this is when we start to feel that spiral start to happen. And it does happen. And it's tough. It's beyond tough. It's beyond tough. It's going to require a superhuman level of endurance. A crisis. It all builds up. Stress. The trauma. the frustration as you don't have the resources to fix these problems. That's what makes it so testing. So testing. You don't have the time, the energy, the money, the connections to fix the problem. And yet it's your responsibility to fix the problem. What are we to do when we are in that time? And everyone's going to go through it at some point. And if you haven't been through it yet, well, I'd say start preparing now, because it's coming. Maybe you're going through it right now. And I hope I have some words here to offer what small amount of support I can offer for you during this time. If you have found this video today because you're really going through that crisis point, stay with me. There is a way forwards, okay? Just don't fall into despair. There is a way forwards. There's always a way forwards. There's always a way forwards. So, the thing is, what makes a crisis is that a lot of the times the advice isn't going to work. Like, I'm sure you've tried all the best advice already. Everyone's got loads of great advice, haven't they? Everyone's got something to say. Everyone's full of this advice. But you've tried it all. I'm sure you've tried it all. That's what makes a crisis. It's that nothing works and nothing is going to work. So, what to do? What to do during this time? Because you're likely to be exhausted. Absolutely exhausted. You're going to be stripped of all of your inner and outer resources. You are at your wit's end. It's like you've ran out of energy and there's still half the marathon left to run. Okay, that's likely to be happening. It's likely that you've already tried everything that you can try to fix the situation. And it's, in terms of the practical advice, well, you're just going to have to go through it. It's just going to be a matter of time. That's all. That's all it can be. So what advice can I give here? Well, in my experience, and I've been through many of these crises. Is that the plural? Crises. Maybe there isn't a plural because you should only ever have to go through one crisis. There shouldn't be crises. I've been through many crises. The best thing you can do is bring yourself as best you can into the here and now. Now, it's not going to fix everything. I don't have advice that's just going to magically fix everything, because that's not the situation you're in, okay? But if you can bring yourself into the here and now and just focus on the next thing, just focus on the next right thing to do. That's all you can focus on right now. You've tried everything to fix the bigger picture, to fix the overarching picture, to fix the overarching life situation. You've been trying to do that, and everything you try just seems to just crumble. That's partly one of the characteristics of the crisis. Everything you try just seems to fall apart. Just when you felt like you were getting somewhere, it just collapses on you. It feels supernatural. It feels like you're cursed in some way. It's almost laughable at times. Just when you started to gain some ground, that falls away through. You started to put a support framework in place and it disappears. You were going to see somebody for the counselling and then that company just dissolves overnight. Like, what? How did that happen? You were just patching things up in your relationship and then they just leave you anyway. They said, right, we're going to try and work on this. We're going to work our way forwards. We're going to book into couples therapy. Oh, and then they just leave anyway. Oh, okay. Just when you thought you were getting somewhere. So this is what happens. The overarching life situation, you were trying to put things in place and everything seems to crumble. If you can bring yourself into the here and now and just focus on the day, you will only ever have to face one day, okay? This is where we start to come into, right, how am I going to get through this? How do I get through the crisis? Just focus on the day. You will only ever have to face one day, and it's today. That's it. There isn't any previous days, okay? You don't have the luxury now of believing in the past and the future. You don't have the energy for it, okay? Just whilst we get through this crisis, just today, that's it. I ain't interested in the past. Whatever. I'm going to leave the past to everyone else. Everyone else seems really keen on this thing called the past, all right? I'll leave that with them, all right? Because I'm busy, okay? That's the attitude we need to take now. You're a soldier now, okay? You've got to really switch on, because it is step up or ship out. That's where we're at, okay? It's do or die time. I'm really sorry to say it, but we got to step up. So we don't have the luxury of constantly thinking about the past now. Leave that to everyone else. We ain't interested in the future, okay? Just don't, you'll just fall into despair. You're trying to, I know what we're trying to do is think about the future. Yeah, things are going to get better in future when I fix this, when I fix that. You're just going to fall into despair because it's just, everything's crumbling. Everything's falling away, and just let it for now. Just let it. This crisis could be an opportunity for you. Big opportunity. The future's going to crumble. Just, we're done with that. Just don't worry about the future. Just focus on today. And just do the next right thing today with the small amount of energy, the small amount of resources that you have. Can we do something today? That it could be tiny. It could be making sure you get out for a walk today. If it's really bad for you, it could be as hard as getting out of bed and having a shower today. Okay, that's how bad things get. It could be making one phone call today. That's it. It's just do the next right thing. Can we cook a decent meal today? Something, anything. Is there one small thing that you can do to get you through today? Do the next right thing in a positive way. And we're not going to turn towards the stuff that we know doesn't work. Speaking as an ex-addict who has recovered from alcoholism, obviously we know that drugs and alcohol aren't a good idea right now, are they? We know that doesn't work. We don't turn towards the people and situations that we know aren't very helpful to us. We're not going to turn towards those. We're not looking for easy options. We're not looking for easy ways out because we know that those don't work. All you can do is the next right thing. And that's not going to fix everything. That's not going to magically make everything better. But what we can do, focus our attention and energy on one thing each day. Just today. That's all I ever have to deal with. Okay, what is it today then? And slowly, we can start to just lay that foundation so that when we start coming out of the other side of this, you'll be able to hold your head high. You'll be able to look back and say, okay, I weathered that. That was rough. That was real hard. That was tough. And I came through the other side. I did it. I really did it. I went through the ringer. Went through the ringer in a way that tested you to your very core. That stripped away your delusions. That stripped away everything you thought you were. You thought you were your job. You thought you were your relationships. Your whole life has just... And yet you survived. And yet you survived. But as you go into that more sort of philosophical thinking, that's on the other side of it. So here's my next piece of advice for you. To keep yourself safe and as well as you can during this time. I would say don't try to figure out why this is happening to you yet. That might seem like, well, that's an odd thing to sort of, why is that important? Because when you're in it, when you're in the crisis point, you are frustrated, you are exhausted, and naturally when we're frustrated, stressed and exhausted, our brains go to very negative emotions. Anger, resentment, shame, rage, humiliation, anxiety, depression. Because you're so stressed out, because you're so frustrated, you're exhausted. And if you start questioning, why is this happening to me? It's not long until you start thinking, I must be cursed. I must have done something wrong in a past life or something. Or paranoia. Everyone's out to get me. This is intentional. I'm under attack here. Or you may start questioning, like, why? Why has this happened to me? And start questioning the bigger picture. Now, I think it's a really powerful thing to do. And I would recommend it, but on the other side of it. Not during the crisis. Because during a crisis, you're not really in your right mind as such. You're not really in your best. You don't have your best thinking cap on, basically, is what I'm saying. You just don't have the quite the you're probably just not gonna see things 100% clearly. So we're not going to question, why is this happening to me? What's the bigger picture here? That comes later. That comes out of the other side. The most important thing to do in a crisis is get through it. That's the important thing. And when we look back, then we'll say, okay. You can always connect the dots when you look backwards. You can always connect the lines. You can connect the image when we look back. But in it, it's going to be very difficult to see. In a storm, we're just going to find our visibility isn't great. We're in the rain, we're in the fog, we're in the waves, in the storm. You're not going to be able to see the port. Just focus on sailing that ship. Keep the ship healthy. And it does lead to the deeper questioning. Out of the other side, why do we go through it? This could be a very deep question. It's a good question to ask. Why? Why do we have to go through this? You will know. You will have your answers when you look back. When you look back through the whole thing, you will have some answers that you didn't have before the crisis. You will know some things about yourself that you didn't know before. You will know a strength and resilience lives in you. You will know that a strength, a power, an endurance, a resilience, a courage, a confidence lives in you always. And you will know this after the crisis. Why? Because you've experienced it. It's not just somebody has told you, you're really strong. Because you can hear that and even believe it. But until you've experienced it, it's not going to be integrated into you. It's not going to be embodied into you. So through the crisis, and now you've experienced it, you've experienced the lowest ebb. You've experienced the storm. You've experienced the hardest times that you didn't even dream were possible. The times that you thought, oh, that'll never happen to me, or I hope that doesn't happen to me. You've lived the worst case scenario. The worst case scenarios happen. The enemy's at the gates. Worst case scenario. And if you held your head high through it, and each day you said, I'm just going to do the best I can, I'm going to get through this. No matter how bad it is, no matter how bad it gets, I am going to make it. And now, in this point, through that crisis, coming out the other side, now you will know this layer of strength. A layer of security that now stays with you always. That old saying that goes, you don't know how strong you are until you have to be. And that is true. You will know that strength once you have experienced that strength. Now that comes later because you don't feel strong in the storm. You don't feel strong in the crisis. Why? Because everything's falling apart. And maybe part of the crisis is your own behaviour, your own actions. You find that you weren't acting right. You said the wrong thing. You keep doing the wrong thing. You've made the wrong decisions. And sometimes you find yourself in a rock and a hard place where every decision you make is the wrong one. I mean, that's what really starts to get to you when there are no good options. You've got a bad option and a worse option. That's it. You might have to go back to a job you didn't want to go back to, a relationship you didn't want to go back to. For whatever reason, you needed something. And so you had to do things that maybe you're not proud of. Maybe you thought you were past certain things you had to revisit. Maybe you did slip up. Maybe you did slip up on your addiction. What? Why? That's part of the crisis. You didn't feel strong at the time, but now we don't fall to despair. Do not fall into despair. Because out of that other side, you know that layer of strength and resilience that lives within you always, even during the darkest times. Your entire life leading up to that crisis point, you've been worried about worst case scenario happening. So you've always had this background layer of anxiety. Now that you've been through the crisis and weathered it and came out the other side, yeah, with a few scars, yes, with a few stripes on the tiger, yes, you might come out of that storm limping. It's never pretty, right? It's a dogfight. It's trench warfare in a crisis. You're not going to come out of the other side all sunshine and rainbows. It's ugly. Ugly. Life gets ugly, right? It's a dogfight. Dogfight. Have you ever seen a dogfight? Comes out the other side. And yeah, it's rough. It's tough. But you've now lived that worst case scenario. So that anxiety that you always had in your mind, oh, what if this happens? What if I lose my job? What if I lose my relationship? What if people get sick? What if I get sick? Well, now it's happened. It's happened. And hey, you're still here. Every day is a new day. Still in the here and now. With all those stripes on the tiger, all those scars. I am covered in the scars of my past. I'm covered in them. These are all messed up, bent nose, stretch marks, damaged liver, covered in it, covered in the scars of my past. And yet you will find me smiling, even in the rain. If you're going through that crisis, I wish you all the very best. I wish I could give you some more practical stuff, because you don't need advice, you don't need motivation, you don't need pats on the back, you don't need any more of that, because that's not going to work. What you need in a crisis is practical support. You need people who are going to who give you money, who give you a day off work. You need people who are going to drive you somewhere. You need people who are going to drop off shopping. That's what you need in a crisis. You don't need motivational speeches in a crisis. You don't even need spiritual advice in a crisis. It can help. But what you really need in a crisis is someone to turn up with a bag of food and drive you somewhere and give you a day off work and hand you some money. That's what's going to help you in a crisis. The spiritual stuff will happen automatically, because ultimately that's why. That's why we have to go through it. To show you that underneath everything, underneath the physical body, underneath the financial stuff, underneath the romantic stuff, underneath the work, underneath everything, all of that, it can be gone in an instant. All of that can be gone in a second. What remains? The consciousness, the awareness, the life energy itself that is always there, always brilliant and always shining. Always. In the dark night of the soul, bright flows the river of God. That's everything I have for you today. Thank you so much for listening. Please remember to like and subscribe. And if you are going through that rough time, that crisis, that dark night of the soul, I wish you all the very best. You still have time. You still have time. Do not despair. There will come a day it's over. There will come a day it's over. As hard as it is, as rough it is as it is for you, as tough as it is, it can't last forever. Even if it's been going on for years, and it could be, it can't last forever. You still have time.